Have you ever really looked up at a city? I mean, really looked? You'll see this spider web of wires crisscrossing everywhere. It's infrastructure we pretty much ignore every single day. But what if that network, that massive web, held the key to a much healthier, safer city? Well, we're about to dive into a concept that could turn these boring old cables into something truly extraordinary. So let's just ask that question. What if all those thousands of miles of wire weren't just for power and data? What if they could become a living, breathing network that actually protects wildlife and helps us understand the health of our own cities? It's a huge question, and it's at the heart of a really innovative idea. All right, so to really get this, we've got to look at the two sides of the same coin: the hidden dangers these wires create and the incredible untapped potential just waiting there. Okay, so here's the deal. On one hand, you have the problem. For birds, these thin wires are almost invisible. They're a silent, deadly threat. And for us humans, we're completely blind to what's in the air we're breathing on a block-by-block level. We have no idea about the allergens or microbes floating around. But then, on the other hand, you have the potential. What if we could turn that threat into a safe pathway for birds? And what if we could make that invisible air totally visible and measurable? This brings us right to the solution. It's a really elegant invention designed to tackle both of these complex problems at the very same time. It's called the PMB cable Pearl. And yeah, that's a mouthful. It stands for Passive Modular Sampling for Measurable Bioindicators. But the idea itself is so beautifully simple. It's just a small, lightweight little device that snaps onto existing wires and is designed with this powerful two-in-one purpose. This quote right here, it just nails the big vision. It's not about just sticking a gadget on a wire. No, it's about fundamentally rethinking what those wires are. It's about turning them from passive corridors into an active data-gathering part of our city's ecosystem. So how in the world does this little device actually do all that? Let's break it down and look at the anatomy of a pearl to see how it pulls off two really big jobs at once. It all boils down to two core functions. Super simple. Job number one, get seen by birds. Job number two, silently and passively collect samples from the air. That's it. Okay, first up is the diverter pearl. Think of this as a visual alarm for birds. Its high contrast pattern just shatters the camouflage of a thin wire against a bright sky. It makes the cable pop, making it super easy for birds to see and, of course, avoid. It's a simple, life-saving visual trick. Now for the second job, and this is where it gets really clever. This is done by the PMB pad. The best way to think about it is like a tiny, sticky microscope slide that's just hanging out on the wire. As the air flows past, it passively grabs a fingerprint of whatever is in the air that week. Pollen, spores, microbes. Scientists can then just pop it out and analyze it to map things like allergy hotspots. And of course, you're probably wondering, is this safe? Well, safety and practicality were baked into the design from the start. Each pearl weighs less than 150 grams, and get this, it has breakaway links. So if there's a big storm or extreme weather, the pearl will just detach safely without damaging the whole cable. That is some really smart engineering. Okay, so it's a brilliant idea on paper, but the big question is always, does it actually work? Let's take a look at how you take something this smart and prove it out in the real world. The plan is to start with what's called a minimal viable pilot, or an MVP. You keep it simple and focused. You just take one 200-meter stretch of cable, you install only 10 pearls, and then, week by week, you swap out those little sample pads and you carefully observe and measure everything. That's how you get the cold, hard data to prove it works. Now, to make sure that data is rock solid, the pilot uses a classic, powerful, scientific method. It's called a BASI test. Now, it sounds a little complicated, but the idea behind it is actually incredibly straightforward. This table lays it out perfectly. BACI just stands for before, after, control, impact. Here's how it works. You find two similar wires. One is your control wire, you don't touch it at all. The other is your impact wire, where you're going to install the pearls. First, you take measurements on both wires before you do anything. Then, you put the pearls on the impact wire and keep measuring both. The difference you see on the impact wire when you compare it to the control wire proves the true effect of the invention. It's a really clever way to isolate the impact. And success isn't just some vague idea here. It is defined by crystal clear, measurable targets. For bird safety, the goal is a whopping 70 to 90% drop in risky flights.
For data collection, they're aiming for at least a 15% gain in the richness of the biological data they collect. And for practicality, swapping out a sample pad needs to take less than 5 minutes. It's all right there.
So let's zoom out. What does all of this really mean for the future of our cities? Well, the true power of this whole system, it lies in its modular design philosophy. These core principles are really what make it so brilliant. First and foremost, bird safety is priority number one. The whole system is designed to be modular, so it's easy to add or remove parts. It collects data passively, so it's super low impact. And, this is critical, it mimics biology without ever releasing live organisms. That is a huge safety feature. And because the system is modular, the Pearl we've been talking about is really just the beginning. The research actually outlines a future where you could add all sorts of new modules. I mean, just imagine, pearls that can harvest tiny amounts of dew for plants below, or others that use biochar to filter storm runoff. It's not just a product, it's an adaptable, evolving platform for making cities better. And that really leaves us with one final big thought. This Cable Pearl project takes something we see every single day and completely ignore, and it reimagines its entire purpose. It really makes you wonder, right? What other overlooked, invisible parts of our cities are just sitting there, waiting for a smart, ecological redesign? What else could we transform?